Hello, everyone. My name is Ritesh Tendulkar. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Modulr, and I'm here to talk to you today about innovation, my thoughts on it, and how do we go about it. Hopefully, that'll help you sort of think about a few of the ideas. Maybe it can help you form your own strategy of how you go about it at your own businesses. But before we go ahead, a little bit about Modulr. So Modulr, we are a e-money institution. We are allowed to hold people's money and give them payment accounts. The payment accounts the businesses can use to receive and send money and generally access payment schemes. We are regulated in the UK and in Europe. Our focus is to have money flow freely within the economy. We want to support growth and innovation in other businesses by taking away their pain points about payments and so on. Our focus is to make all softwares payment businesses. Payments are everywhere. All businesses need payments, but they have been traditionally quite hard to access. Our aim is to be able to make that very easy for people to access. How do we do that? We have built a platform that's a simple and easy to use API that packages sort of three main strands. We are regulated in UK and Europe, as I said before. We have deep technical connections into various payment schemes. And we also have got a scalable and reliable platform that we've built. That takes away the pain that customers have of having these connections themselves, having regulated themselves, and they can access the payments that are then simpler, cost-effective, and faster, right? What that then allows them to do is to create use cases and revenue-building use cases for their own customers. Some of our customers' names are on there: Sage, Revolut, Wavestream, etc., and so on. They are allowed to they can focus on providing services to their customers, because we take away the pain that they have in terms of payments and how do they access that. And a quick plug about our growth and a nice little investment that we had early in the year that helps us sort of validate what we do and help us grow further in UK and Europe as well. So I'm here to talk about innovation, and it's a little bit of a controversial statement, but I believe at Modulr that innovators don't really innovate. Why do I say that? People believe innovation is sort of, there's a recipe, there's a process that you can follow, and that will then get you innovation, and that's how you do it. But in fact, it's a fallacy. What innovation is it's actually backward looking. It's usually after the fact. What do I mean by that? When people are doing something that they think innovative, you can't really be sure if that's going to be innovative or not until much later, when you have done what you do. So let's say your product that you're building. The product is built, is out in the market, people are using it. That's when they think that's an innovative product, right? It's after the fact. When you're doing it, it's difficult to actually say that it will be or won't be. From that perspective, innovation is sort of detached from the effort. Your intent to innovate doesn't mean that you will innovate. The market will sort of judge you a little later and say if that's going to be innovative or not. Now how do we then kind of look at that then? The focus needs to be on just focusing on what you do and how do you do it better. If you focus on, let's say you're building a product and you want that product to be innovative, if you keep focus on that, then hopefully you'll get to a situation when something is considered innovative a little later. Now, people think about innovation, they think about radical, game-changing ideas, right? They think about, a new type of payment mechanism, crypto, things like that, right? And that is not without support, right? Innovation does mean all those things. But innovation also means things that are little improvements that have happened over the long period of time. Only little improvements that you do to your product, your process, whatever you're trying to do add up over time and will give you much bigger gains over time. The first type of innovation that I talked about, something that is game-changing, industry-changing, I call it a disruptive innovation, right? It is really changing the way how things work in your area, your product, et cetera, and so on. The second type of innovation is incremental innovation. You're making changes that are incremental, adding up, and hopefully giving you sort of much bigger gain at the end. Both types are important, so you shouldn't be able to think about just one or the other. And they often go hand in hand. As you're focusing on incremental innovation, you will come across and find ideas that then actually could become disruptive. A great example of this is iPhone, right? If you think about, ask a lot of people, think about an innovation that changed life of a lot of people in the last 20 years, right? More often than not, people will say iPhone. iPhone was the thing that changed how we behave with things, smart apps, and so on. But if you dive deeper into what iPhone was, you will find that it actually was a culmination of a lot of little things that their competitors were at that point already doing. It was, in that sense, improving on what other people were doing, only marginally. But putting all of that together, they managed to create a product that was completely different, that it blew things out of proportion. So focusing on what you do and improving it slightly actually might kind of move you towards innovation as well. So if innovation isn't what people think is innovation, then what is it? How could you actually kind of go about it? We believe the experimentation is the key. What is experimentation? Creating experiments that you can run a hypothesis, then create an experiment around it, build something quickly to either validate it or reject it, and then take it from there is what I think is a way we would go about innovation. You can pick up an area of a product, start working on it, think about your customer, think about your customer's experience, think about what you can change, only a little bit, that doesn't matter. And then keep adding that, and hopefully over time, you will then create something that people will look back on the past to say, yeah, that was innovative, it was really good, right? Now, the incremental innovation is important, but you shouldn't really be also forgetting the big disruptive innovation that I talked about, right? We say, we call it S-curve jumping innovations, things that radically change how things go about it. And obviously, the aim is to get to that. Aim is everyone wants to be the person or be the company that have created something that sort of radically changes how stuff works. But we believe the way to get to that is via a incremental approach where you are focusing on much closer to the home, almost to say. If you're doing experimentation and you picked up a product, how do you then go about that? How do you create the experiments? The key is to get everyone on board. It is sort of thought sometimes, innovation is part, it's a thing that someone needs to do from the product or engineering organization. And that is true. We'll talk about Modlabs at Modulr and how we go about doing innovation. But it's important that you actually involve as many people as possible from your organization. It's engineers and product people, when they're working on problems, if they see the same problem again, sometimes, and obviously this is a very general statement, you get into a blinkered vision. People are thinking about same solutions to same problems. You get inputs from other areas of the business, compliance, customer services, finance. They could be thinking about ways to solve problems that they didn't think were possible because they don't have engineering background, but could actually kind of spark something very interesting. It also lets you look at problems that you didn't think were problems. Engineers obviously sometimes think about the ideal world and how they want their product to be used, et cetera, and so on. And that I've seen cases of that falling flat when it actually hits the real users, right? Users have to jump through countless hoops to do something that engineers thought was a smoothest experience at all. So to actually have that experience come in and feed into your thinking about how you can experiment with will help quite a bit with that as well. The thing about thinking about, though, is that you have to understand that these things won't come up straight away, though. Innovation, whether you call it the way it is understood or the way I'm talking about in terms of experimentation, is a long-term game. You need to be focusing on how you do it and why you're doing it, not the outcome of what it is. And this is kind of going back to what I said earlier about the intent isn't connected to the result. Hence, you need to think about just doing it and have to understand that this will actually kind of go on for a little bit longer time as well. The aim is to have the people who are kind of tasked with doing the innovation to have that headspace to think about these things that are much longer term, that they are not thinking about things that are happening tomorrow, etc., and so on. And we'll talk about a little bit about how Modlabs, Modulr does it to kind of do that as well. This focusing further is needed because not all of the experiments that you do will succeed. The point of experiment is to understand sometimes they will fail. And the failing of the experiment itself obviously is a valuable information lesson, etc., and so on. But there needs to be that buy-in, both from within your innovation units, but also from higher-ups, having that focus and having that support to understand we want to do this, and this will be longer term, and there may be more failures than successes, but sometimes it will pay off as a longer-term strategy. It's quite important to understand when you think about innovation. So how does that then look in practice? So this is nice thoughts, a little bit controversial possibly. How do they actually get around to, so rubber hits the road really, is what we say. Now, companies like Google, they talk about sort of 80-20 or a percentage of time. They gave their employees a certain amount of time to focus on innovation. And when we thought about kind of creating an innovation unit for Modulr, we thought about that as well. We kind of discarded that for two reasons. One reason was context switching. To have people do a job that is their day job for 4 days a week, and then for one day do something else. It's a context switch that not a lot of people sort of work well with. So that was one aspect. The second aspect was how do you actually keep that allocation going when the pressure comes and the client's asking for something? How do you still keep that, that allocation going? And hence we thought about doing it slightly differently. So we have sort of thought about setting up a team that's 100% focused on innovation. You can work about the numbers in terms of how big the team is in relation to your full development capacity to understand how much time you're going to put in on innovation. But the team that's assigned to innovation, Modlabs in Modulr's case, is only assigned for innovation. They're only focusing on what they are doing. What is Modlabs? Modlabs is a cross-functional engineering team, and we are geared towards rapid prototyping. The aim is to think about ideas, build something that's very, very quick to do, build a prototype, and put it in front of customers, either potential customers, existing customers, or internal customers even, and see if that actually works. The hypothesis stands true, or it does not. If it doesn't, move on to the next thing. That's how we go about it. We do that by time boxing. So we have all the experiments that we do, they're time boxed to a certain time, so that we don't, shall we say, fall in love with what we're building. You build something quickly, look at it, it serves a purpose, throw it away, move on to the next thing. And hopefully by doing it fairly rapidly, you will, shouldn't say stumble upon something that is useful and worth building in a little more detail. We don't focus on roadmaps. So we don't have a published 6, 12, 18-month roadmap. That is what we're going to think about. What we have is a bunch of ideas. And we do two things. We have a thematic progression. So you look at one idea, hopefully the second idea you pick up, it sort of builds on what you've done on the first idea, et cetera, and so on. And we have general direction, comes from the stakeholders and our leadership team to think about what should really be thinking about in general sense, not specifically individually what you're doing, but generally what you will be building. Now, that's one aspect. You have got people focusing on how do you focus on experimentation, that's great. But what about the other things that I talked about? I talked about getting everyone on board. How does that work with a single team that's focusing on just innovation? So we do that by creating what we call an innovation council. It's a small body, a construct that we've created that is volunteers from across various areas of the business. The job of these people is to sort of manifold. First of all, they act as an interface between us and the rest of the business. The ideas that we are working on, they take it to their functions. Ideas they have or problems that they see in their regular day-to-day, they come back to, take us back to us as Modlabs, think about what we could do. They also act as a council where we have specific problems that we need more opinions on. Having a group of people that is actually very diverse, coming from very different areas of the business, really helps. A problem that we're working on at the moment needed something like that, and it was brilliant. We just sent a quick brief out, and the response that we got was so varied, very, very useful for us to go through. The experiments themselves, I won't be able to talk about, as you can imagine, but the experiments vary quite a bit. We've looked at things that kind of focus on our internal tooling in terms of how we do things better. We looked at new products that we could build from existing APIs and products that we have in Modulr. We looked at sort of completely left field things, which sometimes are kind of only tangential related to payments. And we also looked at new things that are happening in the payments industry. That today is obviously the big day. I don't know if people were following the news or not, the merge, etc. So we've been focusing on that as well. So all of those things we can do because we've got this team that kind of focuses on innovation. But that isn't the full thing. We've got the setup that is the Modlabs, and we've given them the tools and the support that they need to hopefully do what they need to do. But it's also important that we get this thinking about innovation and experimentation across the whole of the business. It's important for us to have people think about how do we kind of go about asking questions, being curious, et cetera, and so on. So when we looked at those problems, we looked at creating something called ModStart. ModStart is a program that's designed to have new joiners to Modulr focus and get a good understanding of what Modulr is, what's our mission, vision, and purpose, what our values are, and how do we kind of get together. They hopefully get a good knowledge to understand our platforms and how those things work together, and that enables them hopefully to kind of have the ground running. We do that by getting people from all our offices. We have 4 offices at the moment. We get the new joiners from all offices into Edinburgh. It's a multi-day program when they go through sessions that are presented and also interactive sessions where they kind of get to try things themselves. And it's also kind of plugged with some of the social events to help them create those bonds with the new people they will be working together. What that lets us do is have them create a sense of curiosity. A learning environment creates that sense of curiosity of how things work, and they may be outside their area of expertise, their area of focus, but it also hopefully gets them to ask questions. And gives them the sense to say, it's okay to ask questions. You are, when you have a cohort of 10, 15 people together asking questions, sometimes they might seem like stupid questions. They're likely everyone else is thinking about. So to be able to kind of have that helps as well. And then that hopefully kind of creates a foundation for them to then think about asking questions about how are they doing, why are they doing it, and are there better ways of doing things. Putting back into the experimentation of how do we put that thing together and generate more ideas. So hopefully that then becomes a self-supporting virtuous life cycle. So what does that then mean? So we've talked about what innovation is. How do we put it together, and various things. But the important thing is to how do you actually know that you're doing well? Before we do that, let's just kind of recap. So the focus was that innovation is sort of backward-facing. We have intent doesn't mean that everyone will succeed. The way to do that is experimentation. You have to get everyone on board to be able to do this. Think about long-term. But all of that is not going to be much if you don't know if you're on the right path or not. The way we think we should measure innovation is measure the impact of what you're creating. Going back to that example that I talked about in the first few minutes is about iPhone and the impact that created. The focus isn't the impact, but the measure is the impact. So you look at whatever you're trying to do, little innovations that you're trying to do, little additions that you're trying to do, or ones that are S-curve jumping changes that you're making. What is that doing to your customers and the experience of how they use your product? If that is substantially changing, then the innovation that you are doing is good, but the changes that you're making, the experiments that you're doing, hopefully will be considered innovation in the future. If not, rinse, repeat. Keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully you'll kind of come across ways to kind of do this. And that's really it in terms of what I want to talk about. Happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I'm between your lunch, so feel free to jump out if that's what you want to do. Yes?
I was interested in the internal design of the organization. Do you have product managers for each of the product lines? So how does technology interface with marketing, that sort of thing?
Yeah, interesting. So do you want to know that about Modulr or Modlabs? Yeah, so happy to talk about all of those. So we do have, the cross-functional team design that I talked about in Modlabs actually comes from the design of teams that we have in Modulr product delivery. So we have teams that are engineers, product managers that kind of work on specific areas of the platform that we're building. Product managers then interface with the marketeers to both get the inputs that they're seeing in the market, but also how do we best tell our customers what it is. It's building the product is only half the job, isn't it? You've got to have people understand what it does and the problem it solves, and that's what they do. They will also interface with our salespeople who are going out there talking to our prospective customers, and also our customer success people who are talking to our existing customers, seeing them day to day, understanding their pain, and seeing how they use the product. So all that input then obviously goes into the product management, which then decides what are the best areas for us to work on. Same setup is repeated in Modlabs, where we've got similar structure. You've got engineers, you've got product managers, and roughly the same focus. Innovation Council helps us get this wider view, but there may be problems that we're trying to solve specifically that will require specific interactions with sales people, which will do via product as well. Hope that answers your question.
Just, do you have a small multidisciplinary teams, or do you have people who service multiple products?
We have small multidisciplinary teams that focus on specific product areas. They then build into go-to-market, as we call it. This is because teams need to have specialization on what they're doing, and the way we build our platform is it's a product, right? Same platform is doing multiple things, multiple verticals. So you need sort of different focus at different levels. So we kind of have that distinction as well. Yes.
Hi. I was curious what the handover looks like for a successful idea or feature from Modlabs into, say, another product team, and how you might avoid kind of challenges where the same team isn't seeing a feature, say, throughout the entire life cycle.
It's a great question, and the one that we grappled with quite a bit when we started the team. Originally, the focus was let's just find something to build without worrying about how to build that. But we are now at the stage when we have kind of got a few experiments on our belt, and some of them look really promising. So how do we do that? The standard answer at the moment that we're working with is the team kind of works with the experiment. They say that this is successful, and then ticks box X, Y, Z to say this is going to be good or not. They would then work on a sort of a smallish business case of why we should do this. An aspect of the experimentation is to say whether this is possible and usable, but then is it worth building? Is the second stage. So that is what we do, and the Modlabs team will then focus on that. It's a very lightweight. Put together, thoughts about how we're going to go about it and so on. The challenge there is any sort of analysis like that depends on cost benefit, right? How much is it going to cost us to build? And if the Modlabs team isn't the team that's going to build it, then it's difficult for them to say, yeah, it's going to take 5 months. And then the team picks up and says, actually, this is going to be 5 years. What are you talking about? So we don't want to get to that situation. So what we do is we do a very high-level, lightweight analysis to say, this is possible. We think it's going to be this much. And then essentially, why for product resource? To say, could we have someone pick this up? If the business case is important enough, it will then be slotted into our normal delivery schedule and be delivered. Yeah. OK, thank you.
Which innovations are specific to certain regions and countries, and they're constrained by the legal systems, and then innovation for making something like universal. Okay, we want to use some payment method which works everywhere. Can you tell us something about the regionality and this kind of like universality of making like universal products?
Thanks. Great question. There isn't, unfortunately, a sort of a simple answer to say this is what we do, etc. This depends on each of the experiments that we work with. I talked about a few experiments, and won't be able to go into details of those. But the internal tooling that we talked about didn't have to worry about regulation at all. It's all internal. We can do what we want. But there were other things that we had to do that we had to kind of go out and so on. Being UK and Europe based, our focus is at the moment UK, and we have a sort of great in-house compliance legal department that has quite a nice say on what's okay, what's not okay, and we are able to kind of lean on them quite regularly to say, okay, we think we want to do X. What do you think? Is it going to be okay? And so on. And we have had conversations when they say, okay, no, you can't do that. That's not allowed. Our license doesn't allow that. And then have that back forth to say, actually, this is only an experiment. Is it okay for us to do or not? But that will then be extended for things that are beyond UK's borders to say, okay, is it global or not? Some of the stuff that we are looking to do in the new payments area could be about cross-border payments and so on, and being able to kind of understand if this is going to be okay in a different jurisdiction is quite a key of that. We rely on our Innovation Council at a sort of a informal level, but then have a more formal discussion with our compliance team to say, okay, this is what it is, and a legal team to say how we'll go about that. Sorry, no, it's not a hard and fast, this is what we do. Unfortunately, it just depends on each experiment being different. Good.
When you time box an experiment, how do you decide the size of that time box? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so when we started, we just picked a number. We just said, okay, we need to be time boxing. Let's just pick a number with that. And then we said, okay, that's a number. So if that is a number that we want to aim for, could we sort of stretch ourselves to kind of say, gonna go slightly higher. So we kind of had a number in mind, and we said, okay, let's reduce it slightly to see what it is. The way Modulr does stuff, not just Modlabs, everywhere else, is if we don't know, we will start somewhere and iterate to say if it works or not. So we started with a number, and as we did multiple experiments, we then kind of went back to see what does that do to our time box. Is our time box sensible? What does our stretch time box look like? Is it sensible or not? It kind of works both ways. One is something to aim for. The problem with some of the experiments that are not immediately focus on customer problems is that they could go on forever, right? It's cool stuff, building cool stuff. We could just kind of keep doing that forever. Having time boxes help that. And then having done a few experiments, we then have data to say, actually, these experiments seem to be okay. We found that our initial time box was slightly longer than what we thought. And we are able to kind of be a little more tighter to bring it back. But we can review that constantly to say, okay, what works well. The important thing is to have a number to work with and then constantly iterate it to see what works.
Time for one more. Hi. So you mentioned a lot about new products and new features. I'm just curious to know how much the innovation teams or the product teams focus on areas like improving customer experience and customer journey, which are harder to measure the impact because it's not about new sales, but is about keeping your customers happy and hopefully retaining your customers.
Indeed, yeah, and we don't. So the examples I gave were only the examples of product features and so on. Our internal brief of what we do, how we do it, actually is much more wider than that, and it does involve looking at things we already got in front of our customers and looking at that to see how could we make that better. So we do focus on that as well.
So when you was looking at obviously bringing this in as part of your operator model, what was the key challenges that you had, or what are the key learnings that you had as part of actually bringing this in, as opposed to what the team does? I don't know.
Yeah, so because this is, Modlabs is only just under a year old now, so we haven't been in existence for a long time. And when we did start that, it was quite a sort of a challenge to kind of get people to think about it. One of the aspects was quite difficult is actually getting people to understand the experimentation that I talked about and it being longer term and not delivering immediate value to customers and internally, right? We have a extremely busy product roadmap and we're building a lot of things and actually saying, we got a team, but that's not going to work on product. They're going to do something else that is cool. Was quite difficult to get across people. So obviously we had high-level support from our leadership, but getting that thinking across. I remember being on call, trying to explain what we do internally in Modulr, and being asked that question. Why spending time on that? We got this to build. So that was quite difficult to get around. Now that we've built a few experiments and we've shown the value of what we could do, and some of the sales guys have been able to kind of show those to their prospective customers, they see the value of that. So it's kind of turning around a little bit, but that was quite difficult to get around in the beginning. Yeah. Are we doing okay on time or? Okay. So we don't allocate times for individual stages. The time box that I talked about is for the whole experiment. And the way it goes about it, we obviously have multiple stages in the product. If at the start of each stage, we say, okay, this is what we're going to do. That's a problem. How long do you think we're going to take to do that? That becomes a mini time box in itself. That's different for each experiment, right? Some experiments are thought heavy. You have to have a lot of time thinking about why are you doing it, how are you doing it, right? Others are data heavy, where you have to talk to a lot of people to get real feedback and so on. Even third ones have to be, exploratory, because the technology that you're working with is different. So the time boxes within time boxes aren't really fixed. We flex them as we need. But at each beginning of each time box, we'll say, okay, we got to do X, how long? And in that time, we'll say, okay, do we need more time? And obviously, we are okay to stretch. The thing is, these time boxes that I talked about aren't sort of hard and fast requirements, right? This is what we put as requirements on us. So we are happy to kind of move it back and forth as long as it makes sense to do that. So we have that flexibility, but we just work on a stricter schedule to make it happen. Thank you. Yes, okay. I think that's all we have for the time we have. Thank you very much for coming in to listen to me. And if you have any questions, we've got a stand-up, so happy to kind of come and talk. Thank you. Yeah.